Let's show you everything you need to know step-by-step guide on getting a Copilot up and running on your website right now. So what we are not covering in this video is how to create a Copilot for your website. We are talking about how you can now take the Copilot that you've built within Microsoft Copilot Studio and get it up and running on your website for website visitors to use. This includes taking your Copilot and the snippet of code that you need, the HTML, and then adding that to your website. This is not a deep dive into website development or anything like that. So really high level, but everything you need to know in order to do that. First things first, here I am within my Coffee Copilot within Microsoft Copilot Studio. What you're gonna need to do is go over to Channels here in the top right, the Channels tab. Now, here are the different channels in which you can kind of host your Copilot, or ways people can access your Copilot, through these channels. And what we need is the custom website channel. Now you'll notice when I click on this, it says, hey, you can't do this. Your authentication settings are not set up correctly. What is authentication? Authentication, there's certain scenarios where you would want to authenticate the users interacting with the Copilot, and there are some scenarios where you would not. So say you're building an internal Copilot for your employees that potentially has sensitive information. You'd want to make sure that not just anybody can chat with that Copilot, right? So in that scenario, you'd want to authenticate. In a scenario where you are wanting to add a Copilot to an external facing website, you would most likely not want to authenticate. So if you want to go to authentication settings, you can find that by going to settings, selecting security, and then authentication. Make sure you have no authentication selected here. Let me go ahead and save and make these changes. Okay, wonderful. My changes have been saved. I've updated the settings. Now, just before I can add this to my Copilot, I need to publish it. As well, if you have any updates that you want to make to your Copilot and you make them within Microsoft Copilot Studio, you need to publish your Copilot in order for those updates to be made in effect through the channels, or on your website, again, for example. So now that we have a no authentication published Copilot, if I click on custom website here, you will see, this default embedded code, which I guess this would be very sensitive for your Copilot. If anybody had this, they would then have access to be able to chat to your Copilot. Now, this Copilot is disabled by the time this video is coming out, so I'm not necessarily worried about hiding this. But this is effectively the HTML code that you need in order for people to interact with your Copilot. And specifically, you might not need all of this, but you certainly need this URL that's found here. I've actually already kind of created the surrounding HTML that I want to use for my website. So specifically, I want to have a little chat pop-up button that if you click on it then opens up the chat window, but you will notice that in here is where I have this URL. This is now what I need in order to add this Copilot to my website. If you are wanting to customize the way the Copilot experience looks, or the way the chat button pops up, or any sort of those things, that is not done through Microsoft Copilot Studio. That is done within the HTML code here that you're wanting to add. In this example, I have a very simple one. I actually utilized Copilot to create this sample for me. If I go ahead and copy this, I'm gonna go ahead and look to add this to my personal blog and website for this channel. I have an HTML code snippet here. And if I paste that in, you'll see that we now have this chat with us button. I guess I just want to call out, depending on how your website is hosted and the platforms and the plugins and things that you're using, this experience is going to be completely different for every single person. There's potentially an infinite amount of ways on how you can add this HTML snippet to your website. So I'm not talking about that, but for my example here, you can see I have this on my website. Now, if I go ahead and save and publish this, this is now published. Let me actually go to this page on my website, the live page. You can now see I have this chat with us button, and When I click it, this, it pops up in the window down here in the bottom right, and you'll notice that this is the same experience that's happening when within the testing pane. This is the same questions that you're seeing here. So it is the same Copilot. It is the same exact experience. I hope this answered more questions than it raised. If you need extra tips and tricks on how to better create a Copilot within Microsoft Copilot Studio, be sure to check out one of the recommended videos within this playlist. Thank you so much for sticking to the end of the video. My name is Griffin Lickfeld, the host of the Citizen Developer Channel, and I'm excited to connect with you in the next one.